I find it hard to believe that these are the most skipped tracks from these classic albums. Anyway, let's get into it. Well, due to the popularity of my last video, Ever the Opportunist, I thought there's scope for another one. And it is indeed a fascinating topic. And for those of us that like vinyl, there is no such thing as a skipped track. Not unless you want to haul your carcass across the room, probably spilling your cocoa in the process. It's just better to perhaps sit it out. Unless it's Revolution 9, of course. So let's take a look at what those pesky streams are brushing aside from the most iconic albums ever. A list that will leave your flabber totally ghasted. Anyway, let's get into it. So number 10 is Lynyrd Skynyrd, and pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. The most popular track is Freebird. Quite a lengthy one, but nevertheless the most popular streamed track. The most skipped track from this album is Mississippi Kid. So those Neil Young baiting good old boys can do nothing wrong as far as I'm concerned. Although their history with aviation leaves much to be desired, I think. This is a fine album of southern rock that makes you want to get the hog on the spit and give Mary Lou a good old seeing to. Offensive cliches aside, this does contain some of the most popular songs that Lynyrd Skynyrd put out. My favourite perhaps being Simple Man. So the least streamed song is Mississippi Kid. It's kind of an acoustic blues number. And it does feel like a bit of a throwaway compared to the guitar-driven Sweet Home Alabama or the plaintive Tuesday's Gone. Perhaps not much of a surprise there. Number 9 is Kiss and Destroyer. The most streamed track on this album is Beth. The most skipped track is Sweet Pain. So Beth, that Peter Criss sung dollop of syrup, that broke the band on commercial radio, is the most popular streamed number. Whereas the Gene Simmons penned Ode to S&M, or M&S if you live in the UK, Sweet Pain, is the most skipped number. I personally thought it'd be the rather creepy and inappropriate Great Expectations. But then that does employ Beethoven's Piano Sonata number 8 in C minor, and he knew how to write quality tunage, the deaf old bastard. Number 8 is Led Zeppelin IV. Most popular track, no surprises there, Stairway to Heaven. The most skipped track is Four Sticks. Can we say that any of the Led Zeppelin IV album deserves to be skipped? There are quite a few tracks from these classic albums that are absolutely exceptionally good, but are just skipped because one of them has to be, I guess. But John Bonham's Four Sticks is the most shrugged number. It's a rocking number with that rumble of drums underpinning it. As I said, it probably just comes down to it being perhaps the least awesome track on this album. Number 7 is Paul McCartney and Wings and Band on the Run. The most played track on this, the most popular track, is the title track Band on the Run. Again, no surprises there really. And the most skipped track is No Words. However, No Words was the first song. I think it was co-written by Denny Laine with Paul McCartney. Lovely jangle of guitars, and that slide is fantastic. Certainly embellishes this number. Rather wistful, I think. Probably eclipsed by those pesky Jets and, of course, that title track. The vocals are quite high on this number. Of course, when McCartney could reach those notes without surgical intervention. Bit of a nut cruncher, I think, to get there. It has a kind of a demo vibe or an afterthought feel to it. It's perhaps has the feel of an album stuffer. Number 6 is Metallica, and Metallica, otherwise known as the Black Album. I guess we know what the most popular track on this one's going to be. Of course, it's Enter Sandman, the most streamed number. The most skipped number on this album is The Struggle Within. This album sold absolutely bazillions, and it sent Metallica down the road of more mainstream rock, I think. Many Metallica fans to this day feel it was a bit of a sellout. But I love this album, but then I'm a real sucker for a good tune. The best track on this album, in my humble opinion, is The Unforgiven. Many argue that this is the album that led to the softening of the Metallica brand, especially with the subsequent release of the seminal Load. See what I did there? And of course the subsequent Reload. It seemed that the path to mainstream glory was well and truly furrowed or started with this album. But the one track on this album that rather ironically is a kind of a balls-out thrash number, which is very reminiscent of old-school Metallica, is the one that's most skipped. Maybe fans of this record like the more poppier Metallica. Go figure. Number 5 is Joni Mitchell and the Blue Album. The most streamed track is A Case of You. Again, no real surprises there. The most skipped track is The Last Time I Saw Richard. A Case of You is from the 1971 Blue Album, an absolutely stunningly ornate record. And there's so many great covers of this song vis-a-vis Tori Amos. The album's closing and least streamed track is The Last Time I Saw Richard. Again, this is an ornate piano ballad, which adds to the dull ache and the heartbreak of this record. But as I said about Led Zeppelin, it must just be the least played brilliant track from a brilliant album. Number 4 is Nirvana and Nevermind. The most played track, pretty predictable, is Smells Like Teen Spirit. The most skipped track is On a Plane. Nirvana's very generation-defining 1991 album Nevermind saw absolutely huge sales of baggy sweaters and a significant drop in sales for deodorant. And we get that famous baby sleeve. Spencer Eldon, the most famous wiener in rock. But On a Plane, I don't understand why this is the most skipped track. I love that song. I love the acoustic rendition of it on their Unplugged album as well, so I have no idea why this one is the most skipped track on this record. I would have thought Something in the Way or Polly would have been the most skipped tracks on this album, but hey, never mind. Number 3 is Ozzy Osbourne and Blizzard of Oz. The most streamed track is, quite predictably, Crazy Train. The most skipped track is No Bone Movies. This was a real statement of an album, this sort of first post-Sabbath album from Ozzy. It was absolutely excellent, had to be good, I think. With Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, Seaside Solution, wonderful, wonderful numbers. But the Anti-Flesh Flicks anthem, which is No Bone Movies, on this album is a little bit flaccid, if you ask me. I really don't like this song, and I can fully understand why it's the most skipped over. Number 2 is Pearl Jam and 10. The most streamed track is Even Flow, and the most skipped track is Deep. Even Flow is the opening track of one of the greatest albums of the 1990s, in my opinion. But Deep feels like a bluesy trudge. It doesn't exactly sparkle with the brilliance that exudes from the other ones, like Alive and Jeremy, for example. So it's no surprising it's the least streamed from this band, the band that single-handedly reinvigorated sales of corduroys and plaid shirts. Number 1 is Pink Floyd and Dark Side of the Moon. The most streamed track of this album is Money, no surprises there. But the most skipped track is Eclipse. Ultimate Classic Rock, who actually published this article, said that if there's any proof needed that streaming is a song rather than an album-based marketplace, this is it. And I guess streaming platforms probably don't take too well to concept albums, I think, where you're actually supposed to listen to it in a specific order. But I'm flummoxed by this one. I mean, Eclipse, that's that's the denouement of this album, the orgasmic moment at the end that leads us into that descending sort of heartbeat, fading out. If I was going to skip any track off this wonderful album, not that I ever would really, I always play it in its entirety. On the Run would be my choice with its paranoid screeches and electronic loops and bloopery. But there you go, I can't claim to sort of tap into the rationale of this choice. So there you have it. They're the 10 most skipped tracks from these classic albums by those streamers amongst us. If you enjoyed this video, please do share it far and wide. Please do click like, subscribe, check that notification bell. It all helps the algorithm along. And do check some of the links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work done at Classic Album Review. It's always much appreciated. Become a Patreon, why not? We are forming a real classic rock community over there. Anyway, I'll just leave you with my closing salvo, which is, I hope you're well, staying safe, and of course that you keep listening.